Welcome everybody. It's been a while. I've almost forgot the name of the show. Low Pete Talk. My name is Robert, and with me is
Oira.
That's right, not Peter. Weeder. Yeah, welcome everybody. A lot's happening in the world as always. There's a lot going on. Maybe we start off in the backyard of at home. We've had a few stabbings lately, haven't we? In Victoria. You know a bit about that, Peter?
Yes. And the Ferrari bins that are being deployed there to collect some of the machetes and knives that they've put out.
Is that what they're calling them? Ferrari?
I call them that because each bin costed 325,000, which is about the price of a Ferrari. I mean, not the best one that you can get, but you can get a Ferrari for that much, I think.
Let's talk about the Ferrari bins themselves. They reckon it costs about 300 odd thousand a bin. I was hearing about the debating that it's not really that much because a lot of it's spent in disposing of the knives or weapons later on. So it's being a bit unkind and unfair. The overestimation, obviously, the collective total divided by how many bins, and that's how people come up with that number. Whichever way you look at it, it's going to be 200,000 plus.
I never knew smelting steel cost that much money. I'm just going to point it out like that. But each to their own. Sure. Let's just say I wonder which minister's hip pockets are getting lined with.
So what's going on in Melbourne? Are there people walking around with machetes? Is that what it is? Are there that many people walking around with machetes
Well,
in Melbourne?
I think it's just the statistics when it comes to knife crime in Victoria.
It's just gone out of control, has it?
That's what I've been hearing as of late.
Is it Victoria? Is it Melbourne? Is it just Victoria, the state in general? Can I be controversial on top of that?
Yeah, chuck it on in. I'm looking up statistics while you're.
All right, I'm gonna throw it to you. Is it because of migrants coming in? Is that what they're speculating, or is it? I mean, what is the variable that's all of a sudden it's become a problem?
I don't think they've ever given a direct reason why it's gone up. I mean, I guess you can find correlation with the data. There's always that adage of correlation does not equate to causation.
Moral panic over African gangs. That's what I'm getting on one of the articles here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this is from the ABC, mate. Get to the point. When young people commit violent crimes, society instinctively looks for simple answers. Terms like gangs, African youth, and knife crime surface quickly, offering the illusion of control. They allow us to believe that if we can identify and contain a problem group, we can restore safety. But these categories are blunt instruments. This is from ABC, of course, what they're saying.
Yes.
So I think they're counter-arguing it, in saying that it's a stigma attached. But when I'm looking at all the pictures in the news, they look African. These people, sadly, these victims and people involved in this crime, or is that wrong? I don't know. I haven't been studying it. I'm just looking at pictures that I'm seeing come up on the news feeds here.
Yeah, look, I'm just gonna say I don't live there. I don't follow the media in terms of what population group is called, like is the behind it all. So I'm not going to say it's this or that. I just know that there's been a sharp uptick in the amount of knife crimes.
You got any stats then to justify otherwise?
No, it's surprisingly it's quite hard to find the actual statistics when it comes to it. There is Australia-wide statistics, but nothing really when it comes to Victoria, where it's the linchpin of knife crime. But it is interesting. People caught with a machete can face 2 years in prison or a fine of more than $47,000.
So, all right, they're putting some severe consequences. I'm finding here that they reckon could be another variable to think about, the cost of living as pressure on people. What do you think about that?
Interesting you say that.
Yeah.
During the lockdowns that we all endured during that certain time period of our lives, some people in my circle joke around that it was time for them to have a machete just in case if things became worse and they needed a
Yeah.
weapon to defend themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say in America, don't they, for the guns and the gun
Yeah.
problem they have over there. Yeah, it's not a new issue in Victoria, because you look back to 2023, post COVID, of course, as well. There is that concern even back then on the 24th of November, one of the ABC News articles I'm finding here. It just seems to be a trend that's going up, obviously, hence these bins that are being put up everywhere.
Yeah, I think they've been put for 3 months to allow people to surrender.
Yeah.
I guess the machetes anonymously.
I mean, we should watch this space carefully. Like I said, I went for the migrant issue because, I don't know, wherever you look at it, in terms of articles, you see front and center African kids. And this recent one was, sadly, we're talking about a human life here, was an African kid, wasn't it? That was the father's tribute's all about that. You know, the murder of 12-year-old Chol Achik, and I apologise for my pronunciation. And friend, I don't know the age. I was looking at the age there, but I don't subscribe to them, so it disappeared. But we're talking about that, aren't we? We're talking about possibly in this particular case here, some lovely young kids and their lives taken too soon by these crimes that have occurred. Yeah,
I have some statistics to add to all this as well.
come on, go for it. Is this AI? Is it or?
No, no, I've just been looking. I found this in The Age, an article in The Age, and they do post some statistics.
All
So
right.
this is in Victoria alone,
Yeah, yeah, that's what we're
not
looking at. Yeah.
Australia, and we want to focus on Victoria because they're the ones first implementing this. Police are making 208 arrests a day, alongside
Wow.
an unprecedented seizure of edged weapons. So this is not just machetes; this is any edged weapon, right? So
Oh,
these are
yeah, wow.
knives,
Wow.
right? Now, there was an 18% rise in offences committed by 10 to 17-year-olds
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
12
yeah.
months leading to March.
Yeah.
And that's coming from the Crime Statistics Agency. People under 18 were charged with 25,275 offences over that period. Right, so from 12
Wow.
months up until March this year, 25,275 offences. So then the attacks started spiking in 2019. So this is
Mhm. Yeah.
pre-COVID.
So it started before COVID. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And then alongside an increase in youth offending. So
Yeah.
that's so I guess the correlation there with is that the youth leading the charge when it comes to these types of offences. It's not to say that adults aren't doing it, but the youth are leading the charge. Okay, and yeah, then the latest statistics show that there's a record number of knives being seized. Now, an interesting thing: machetes were banned to be sold at September 1 in Victoria, so you can't buy any more machetes according to this year.
Oh, what a shame. I've always wanted, if you lived in Victoria, you wouldn't be able to own a machete
No,
in a city. Why would you need one? But anyway, yeah.
and obviously the laws are implemented. Okay, so also as well, the state government implemented tougher laws starting from March 21. So, but it had limited impact in the latest quarterly data. So basically, it says here now that there was a 100% increase in youth offenders remanded at a 31% increase in adult offenders remanded.
But but what people are, is it people that are downtrodden? I mean, who is it that's
It's
causing?
not basically from the article here. It has not gone into demographics.
Yeah,
It's just more like the age groups of people. Yeah.
yeah. I guess my prejudices are based on limited exposure of what I've seen. So I'm digging and digging and digging and digging, and I'm prompting the AI, and the AI is trying to say, no, 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 it's not because of race. But it's funny, the AI tries to be balanced, but it's
Yes.
not. But it's not. It's like it's trying to. I'm worried about this. This is from Gemini because it's saying Statistics from Victoria show that some ethnic groups, including those from African and First Peoples backgrounds, what are First Peoples backgrounds? Is that First Nations it's meaning?
First Peoples, I would assume it would be our Indigenous population.
Yeah, okay. Are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. For instance, in some periods, a disproportionately high percentage of young people in youth custody were from African backgrounds compared to their representation in the general population. This is a fact, but it is not the cause. That doesn't make sense to me, that last sentence. It's the fact, but it's not the cause. I don't know. Am I missing something here? I overthinking it. Then he says the overrepresentation is a result of complex web of factors, and I'm interested in this. This is what it's about. It's not about discriminating minority groups or groups of population. It's about, okay, if it's happening in certain pockets, what the question should be: if it's happening for certain races or certain people, why is it happening? And it's not because they're people from country X or culture X are bad people. It's about what is it that's not helping them, that young people in their population are feeling disillusioned. That should be the question. If that seems to be the statistic that comes up, we should be helping, not denying, if that makes sense. It says overrepresentation is a result of a complex web of factors. And I'm interested in this bit, the factors, yeah? Okay. It's linked to a person's, that are often linked to a person's race or ethnicity in a society that is not fully equitable. Okay, that's really interesting. So let's unpack it. Socioeconomic disadvantage. Many young people from these communities face significant, and so now we get into the cause, challenges. That's what I'm interested in. Poverty, unemployment, lack of access to education and training opportunities. These conditions are widely recognised as drivers of crime across all populations, not just specific ethnic groups, it says after that. Systemic racism and discrimination. Reports from bodies like the Victorian Government, this is interesting, and legal aid services highlight the role of systemic racism in the justice system. This can include over-policing of certain communities, racial profiling. I'm a bit scared hearing that because we hear a lot about that in the States, don't we, as a controversial theme. And biased use of police discretion, being more likely to be arrested or detained than receive a caution. Now, I don't know if that's based on quantitative or qualitative data, if that makes sense, whether that's opinionated or it is actually justified by it, because I'm not having any data here. This is more explanation.
Yeah, it's I guess like the really the only thing we have to go off, I would say, is the fact. But like you said earlier, when you're reading a prompt back, the facts only paint half of that picture because there is some qualitative aspects that you can't measure. In societies.
Yeah, it's interesting you can focus on the causation, but the causation is endemic of races, whether we want to accept it or not. But I do agree the energy should be on the causation, don't get me wrong, but you don't deny the reality of what's happening in communities. When we talk about being specific, why there are issues within the data when we look at First Nations people in prison and the number of them that end up dead in prison, yeah? That's a statistic. You can't deny who it is. It's First Nations people. Why is it happening? Yeah, okay, it could be happening for a variety of reasons, and that's important because then the necessary mechanisms need to be developed and established within society in order to try to help, not marginalize or ostracize groups.
Yeah, I agree, and especially using the data to undermine cultures as well.
Victorian government report noted that between 2021 and 22, 39% of those in youth custody in Victoria were African identifying young people, despite making up only 2.6 of the wider youth population aged 10 to 17. Isn't that a tragedy when you hear that? Isn't that a tragedy? Shouldn't it be looked at that way? Should we be denying that as a concern when the 2%, 2.6% of the population, obviously the system is letting them down.
Yeah, agreed.
And why hide from that and then try to say, oh no, it's something else other than that. There is a problem within that community, African identifying people. And remember when we talk about African identifying, we're talking about from a variety of countries, aren't we? We're not just, we're not ignorant enough to see Africa as a country. Sometimes when they're questioned off the street in America, I think Africa is a country, a continent. So many beautiful nations that make up the continent of Africa. I'm interested in this and I'm curious in this because I passionately believe that we're letting our young down if we're hiding away from this number of 39% in custody and only making 2.6% of the population. There's something wrong there, isn't there? There's a skew.
Yeah. There's something. Something's missing.
Yeah, because it's hard. It's very difficult. And Governor Newsom in America, he'll be running for president, I think. He'll be trying to get in as president the next election. He's quite a good talker. He's a smooth operator, that Governor Newsom. And he does have some really, sometimes these pearls of wisdom. There's a lot of sales pitch in him, don't get me wrong. But when he talks about the issues in America about the migrants, yeah, particularly California, the Mexicans, yeah? And I apologize to our listeners that I'm saying the Mexicans, but that's what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. You have Mexicans, particularly that have lived there from South America. Yeah, it's not just Mexico, is it? There's other South American countries, and they've made a life for themselves in California, particularly. I'm talking about for a moment. And obviously, there's one approach by the Republicans in America where they've gone, let's go gun ho. They have an organization, ICE, yeah, that are going to throw him out. There's some horrible stories out there, whether they're true or not. Whichever way you look at it, there's a lot of fear and panic out there in the community that good, working, honest citizens that maybe didn't come in through the front door correctly are going to be sent back home. What Governor Newsom says, which is quite insightful, is, I can't remember the words and I wish I did because he does eloquently point out, you cannot forget the dignity of the people that you're talking about. You can't just throw that out. Does that make sense? They are human beings. Yeah, you want to label them as Mexicans or from El Salvador, wherever they're from, okay, in South America. You can go into that labels, but it's dangerous if you just go for the label first and don't go, okay, these are human beings and there's an issue here with these human beings. How can we work with these human beings to get the best positive outcome? That's not the rhetoric, is it, at the moment? It's like it's good versus evil almost. They're trying to make it out.
It's the best way to kind of create that division before. Before I guess the population tolerate.
And I see it with many aspects of what's going on, this division at the moment, and maybe that's the theme of the podcast, thinking about it at the moment. There is, some people say it's by design and there's a bigger picture. I'm going to shy away from that, thinking that is some sort of conspiracy out there to make us divided as a population, as human beings. But it seems to be magnified divisions on many, and we've discussed this on previous podcasts. Over the weekend, our next news obviously comes up, would be the aggravated protesting in Bondi in Sydney. So we moved to Sydney for a moment and we had Palestinian group, if we call them Palestinian group, in that obviously people that are very concerned about what's going on in Gaza and deciding to protest in Bondi. And obviously 1 + 1 = 2 in that. I think it was intentional to send a strong message because there are a lot of Jewish people that live in Bondi, whether you want to shy away from that fact or not. So there was a little bit of unrest. That's, when I say a little bit, well, the lives weren't taken. That's why I say a little bit, but there certainly was a moment, a skirmish. Thankfully, our state police did their job and stepped in and intervened and ensured it didn't go beyond that. But the point is, it's another example, and we're getting it nearly every weekend or nearly every day of the week, these divisions and these lines of division being formed within the nation at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's the common theme now that we're seeing is reasons to divide, whether it's you're supporting country X in conflict conflict Y, and it's just getting to the point where almost every aspect of newsworthy articles, it's you gotta pick a side. Like, when I look at a lot of the conflicts that are happening outside of Australia, one of my first question is, why do I have to pick a side? I don't know the ins and outs of the situation. Why should I be picking a side and pledging my support in any way for them? It's just a matter of, you know they can work it out. Once they work it out, they'll we can then move on from there.
Do you know George Lucas is a genius?
Go on.
As you were saying this, what you're saying, about this division,
Yeah.
you were concurring with what I was saying. It was starting to resonate, this idea of, in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin says to Obi-Wan Kenobi during the Battle of Mustafar, he says, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. And Obi-Wan responds with, only a Sith deals in absolutes. It's almost like we're living in absolutes at the moment.
Yes. And as soon as you mentioned George Lucas, that was the first thing that came to mind. The Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting on Mustafar. But that's the first thing, and it's
It is
yeah,
powerful, isn't it? Geez, that those prequels, some of the stuff is getting more and more. Even the original series is becoming more and more obvious. Some of the powerful messages in there. Only Sith still in absolutes. I find that really interesting because if we go back to, all right, in the news at the moment as well, we're doing a news thing here as well as chewing the fat. But you look at Greta Thunberg. What is it? What is the pronunciation of that surname? I'm getting variations of Thunberg. Okay, Greta. We'll just call her Greta. Okay. She's on that crusade on the boat there. Many others following her. The flotilla, isn't it? Flotilla, a fleet.
Yeah. Don't call it a crusade. I get the wrong idea there.
Well, on a mission. Okay.
Yes, yes.
She's on her way there to the Gaza to bring much needed health aid by all reports. And there's a group of other nations there as well, and they're going to be supporting her on that worthy cause by many. See, I say by many because that's where I'm going to get to now. That's why I say by many, because it depends on which side of the fence you sit. You can't. You're almost like dragged into. You have to pick a side, on this Israel Palestine. There was a football match, Italy versus Israel, overnight, and the Italians sent a strong message. A lot of the fans turned their back on Israel based on what's going on in the Gaza at the moment. So there's strong messages. And then if you listen to certain people that are on the right, they're really, really strong about, hang on a moment, don't forget October 7. They have a mandate, they have a reason, they have a cause. They need to clean it out, whatever way you want to describe and define it. And I don't think Trump helped anything with his vision of turning Gaza into real estate. So, we've had previous episodes and we've tried our best, haven't we, Peter?
Yeah.
To try to come up with a side that we would be on. I just don't see it in absolutes. I just can't. The only absolute I have is there's human life.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, to use the analogy of the Force, that's more on the light side of the Force because it pertains to the greater good.
You could even go that deep with the Russia-Ukraine. That's still going on, and Putin, again, in terms of the news at the moment, he's going full hog in Ukraine still. And you look at that and you go, yeah, I could validate, and I've said this in previous episodes, and I'm not just saying it just to sound like I'm so wonderfully centered, but I just can't think, and maybe that's what we hopefully provide as a point of difference in our show, and our following is getting bigger and bigger, is because you and I think similar in terms of we don't sit on a certain side of the fence with these issues. I mean, you could easily go through Russian history and look at Europe in terms of over the centuries and some of the shonky stuff that goes on in Ukraine in terms of corruption, which every country has, mind you, in its own scope and extent, to validate what Russia did, and even what in terms of NATO encroaching on that border, if you want to call it. So Putin felt that obligation to up the ante and invade another country. But then you can certainly validate strongly, hey, look at us, poor us. Yeah, we've been invaded by another country, we the Ukrainians, and there's powerful images of that occurred initially, particularly coming out of the media with the bombardment of the destruction of a lot of buildings, particularly in Kiev, the capital. And all of a sudden you go, what about the people that are living here? And then the women going off to surrounding countries while the men stay behind and fight the war. It sends strong messages, doesn't it, to validate the Ukraine cause. And there were a lot of people online that were putting up their Ukraine flag, weren't they, in their profile on social media at the time. So it's almost like a lot of people want to go into the absolutes. And I find it really interesting when I hear the argument, but it can be in a very resentful way. But there might be some mileage in it if you take the resentment and the finger pointing away and go, hang on a moment, we're in Australia here. We have our own issues to worry about. Why are we worrying? Not, I hate saying that because, of course, we should never turn the blind eye to any human suffering. But what good is it for us when we have a lot of other serious issues here we should be worried about in many ways? Should we be forming absolute allegiances on every cause that's out there?
Yes, yeah, and that's the, I guess, the crux where we, as the Western civilization, are kind of in at the moment. You know what it kind of feels like. It's like we're bored and we need
A cause,
stimulation
a
or a
cause,
cause.
or a
You know,
crusade. Use that
yeah,
word.
yeah, to keep, I guess, to keep us entertained. Like, and mainly because, like, then you look at, I guess, what's happening to the Western world. Like, for lack of a better way of explaining it, the Western world's crumbling. Developing nations are still developing, and moving forward. But the first world slash West world is collapsing.
Did you see that interesting image in terms of news again? Putin, North Korean leader, Chinese leader, and the Indian leader all together.
Yeah.
It sent a very strong message, didn't it? It's like this is the new world order, and I don't mean that at all with any disrespect to those nations or people. Like we're right and they're wrong by using the world order expression, because when you go down the channel of absolutes, I couldn't help thinking about also. I remember Star Wars. Going back to Star Wars for a moment, was George Lucas trying to make a statement about the Vietnam?
Yeah.
And we know how that went, don't we? Who was right, who was wrong in that war? Look at the Gulf War. Who was right, who was wrong? There's no weapons of mass
When you look at, you got to
destruction.
look at both of them.
There was no weapons of mass destruction. Was it fair carpet bombing Baghdad? Yeah, if you want to counter argue with absolutes and say, hey, and I heard it being said on one of an interesting podcast. I can't remember. I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast where one of the high ups in the army spoke about the validation of what they did in the Second Gulf War when he got to go to one of the temples or places that Saddam Hussein existed, and how he saw the torture chambers and all these other terrible human suffering, evidence of human suffering occurring, and he felt there was that validation or vindication that that was the right move to do that, to go in there. But you know what came out of all that? Came ISIS.
Well, whenever you create a power vacuum, something has to fill it.
I know it's simplifying it all. There's a lot more complexity to it, but it seems to be creating a lot of create a lot of problems. And Almost you could simplify it to a lack of understanding between the Sunni and the Shiite and the Islamic faith by the West, the complexities of different clans and different groups of people, and not respecting the history, the culture, the centuries.
Yeah, I think it's you've nailed it there. The West tries to think like we understand other cultures.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to just put it down to Islamic cultures.
Mm.
I'm going to say we like to think that we understand all other cultures, when the reality is um, we don't. And if you look at like a country like Australia, for example, we're made up of a lot of cultures. Like
Yeah.
it's not just indigenous culture. It's not just a British culture. It's not just
Yeah.
European. It's now a mix. It's truly a mix of everything. So we don't have. We're like a child who's starting to learn about other cultures. And I don't know if you remember when you were a child, but as soon as you learned something, you thought you were the smartest person in the world when it came to that topic. But and that's I think where the West in general is with a lot of the cultures in the world.
Do you want to hear an interesting one? Our lack of understanding in the West when America went into Afghanistan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was two fronts. Yeah. People could narrow it down to it was down to the fact that they were going there for axis of evil. Yeah, and that's what we heard a lot of rhetoric around. But what about the war on drugs? You ever heard about that aspect?
Well, isn't Afghanistan the largest? Don't they have the largest opium production in the world?
Yeah, we're talking about obviously what we from the media were all about was combating terrorism, but there was also this combat the drug trade. Initially, the U.S. military primarily focused on counterterrorism, and there was a reluctance to engage in the counter narcotics operations, which was seen as law enforcement issues, and it created a tension between the military and political objectives. Paradoxically, if you want to look at this in terms of data, before the invasion, the Taliban had implemented a highly effective ban on poppy cultivation. That's in 2000, okay? After the Taliban's removal, yeah, we're talking about the central government in Kabul,
Yeah. Yep.
was
Yep.
weak or weakened, and the warlords and other factions, many of whom allied with the US, they filled the power vacuum and relied on the opium trade for income.
Well, do you believe
So,
so? So for me, when you look into it, when it comes to this the drug trade, I believe that these power vacuums was created intentionally
yeah.
to allow opium to flow into
Mhm.
countries like the US, so that pharmaceuticals can be made from that opium that's sourced a lot cheaper than I guess how with their current supply was where it was coming from.
See how it becomes, people can become very sinister easily. And going back to this dealing in absolutes, when you go absolute, you go down the line of, yeah, we're going to liberate these countries, yeah? We're the saviors of the world in the West, and we're going in and we're fighting this axis of evil. September 11, the dramatic scene. There's George Bush, yeah, I think he had a book in his hand, if I'm correct. Well, that's why I said George Books. His scene I'm talking about, that video scene where film footage where he's sitting down in I think in a primary school somewhere or baby childcare or wherever he is, and then one of the Secret Service whispers in his ear, "What's going on?" Do you remember that video footage?
Was that for that, or was that for September 11?
September 11, I'm talking about.
Yeah. September 11. Yes, yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was this strong patriotism in America. American flags everywhere. A real respect and honor for the firefighters, the police force, the army. And then there was this big movement and rhetoric by Bush and all his war hog friends in the government at the time and I do say war hog friends because then there was that big push towards obviously, and I found it intriguing at the time, my lack of knowledge in the space, that they were going to Iraq, but then they were going to Afghanistan. Afghanistan kind of made sense because, hey, bin Laden might be hiding there, yeah?
Yeah.
True. And there's even a documentary on Netflix where you see that, where they narrowly miss out on getting Bin Laden the first time. Yeah, in that could have ended a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Their hunt for him. But then I then was trying to get my head around at the time. I can remember not long after that, or about the same time period, we had this second front where they wanted to go into Iraq, and then we had the whole weapons of mass destruction and going to the UN and footage definitely conclusively pointing out that there's weapons there. And they never did find anything anyway. And almost you always laugh because now we live in a time this year where we had America with their big bombers going over to Iran, dropping a few of their nice little presents over their nuclear facilities, yeah, because there was a fear that they were just months away from having nuclear capability to wipe Israel off the map. And in saying that, the hilarious aspect of this, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's been saying that for decades. You're only months away from being able to annihilate us with nuclear weapons. So the rhetoric by good old Benny there, Benny Hill, been over there in Israel. He's a bit of a comedian in many ways, sad comedian, because I'm not holding back here. He seems to be more in need of conjuring up a lot of trouble in that region at the moment. But in saying that, I'm almost going in absolutes here. It'd be pretty hard to be little Israel in this region, wouldn't it? With all these countries surrounding you, wanting you blown off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I would just say to people that I guess are hard on Israel without being directly related to it. Imagine putting yourself in a room and you know that everyone in that room hates you.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy.
And now take it to the next level to make it even worse. Everyone in that room wants to kill you.
Yeah, see, but then I can't argue that, and we can have a bit of boxing going on here, and go, well, hang on a moment, let's go back to 45, 42. What happened there? Yeah, what the British did. This is all because of them. Oh, these people that are in Israel, most of them were Europeans that came over. I could go down some really dark, unfair, unkind rhetoric to counter argue these points. It's not easy. It's not straightforward. The reality is that you have a hornet's nest in a lot of these places in the world. I like that expression. You kick a hornet's nest, don't you? Yeah. What
Yeah.
happens? Yeah, true. You have these hornets' nests all over the world, and they're buzzing around. And then we go, and people outside come in and literally kick this nest and expect these hornets, whatever it is, wasps, to just scatter and don't come back. But it doesn't work that way, does it? They get aggravated and angry and resentful. And look what we have in the Gaza. They may be building a generation of people. I don't know what's going to come out of there. I really don't. Are they building a whole army of a new, fresh army of people that are going to hate Israel?
Oh, look, I don't think what's happening there is making the situation better.
And going against that, why aren't they releasing these bloody hostages? Or is that their leverage? Is that their bargaining chip? And if they lose that, they have nothing. Is that what it is?
I would say they're probably not alive at this point. Like they've released everyone they can.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting approach. It's really interesting. I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing that out there. I'm not reading that.
No,
That's an interesting little theory. Yeah, it's an interesting theory.
when you're in the middle of an armed conflict,
Yeah.
right? Like you take prisoners of war, that's like this is now a conflict between a nation. You take prisoners of war because you've captured soldiers. You don't want to kill them because they've surrendered, and you want to do the humane thing of keeping them out of not being able to fight, but also you're not just blatantly killing them because that's just waste. That's a waste of life. But to keep civilians who have no value locked up and not able to return, that makes no sense. Now, if they were using them for slave labor, I could make and say, okay, fair enough, which that is a possibility. But if they're just kept as prisoners, that serves no value at this point because the conflict's already sparked up and it's alive and raring.
It's not absolute, is it, what's going on?
Yeah.
And which way to look at this? Obviously, there's a big, strong community movement towards Israel to stop. And that's coming from within Israel as well. My gauge and read on this as well. Even some of the hostage family members are outspoken and saying, come on, enough's enough, slow down, ease off. It's in a very precarious situation, this Israel-Palestine situation. On another area to consider here, do you want me to go way off here?
Let's do it. Let's go to...
all about these absolutes here. I'm going to throw one at you. Hunter Biden. I mentioned about Russia and Ukraine. In 2014, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma Holdings, owned by one of those Ukrainian oligarchs. At the time, the company was under investigation for corruption and money laundering, and Biden was reportedly paid a substantial amount for his role. And remember, he has no background in energy industry or Ukraine itself. There's a lot of these stories out there. When we talk about trying to be absolute as a citizen and not being in the circle of know what's really going on, if that makes sense. Why I mention this one before you talk, Peter, is that the Russia-Ukraine war, is this part of the complexity of it all? The money and the power and the little benefits that are out there for nations?
I think that's the only reason why there's a conflict there.
And they're resource rich, is that correct?
Yeah.
So what's the story there? Do Russia need the resources, or is it the US as well as Russia want the resources?
No, I think for you know what I would say would be like Russia's, I guess, monetary benefit for going there is not so much the resources. It's because I think they would have allowed Ukraine to exist autonomously if they were centered towards the Russian side of politics anyways. I think it's more favorable treatment to the companies that Putin has his stakes in. So that way they can become more profitable, he gets more money, and the world goes around from there.
So it is a money thing for Putin as well.
Look, I can't sit here and go, oh no, there's no monetary value from Russia. And it's not just Putin. There are other people that within Russia that have influence in Russia that have that same level of impact, as in we want to make money from this. This is how we can make money. So let's go make some money.
Yeah, obviously there is that other side. If we shy away from being the absolute cause, is this impeding or infringing concern about NATO and NATO's role? Or is that just a good excuse on Russia's side to say we're really concerned about Ukraine joining NATO? Now, I've oversimplified it, by the way, by defining and describing it that way.
One of the beautiful things about what happened in relation to that, it shows that Ukraine is shifting their politics and leaning towards the politics of the rest of Europe rather than the politics of Russia. Because I'm pretty sure you're aware the politics of Russia for the longest time have been a lot different to the rest of Europe.
And then we have the situation in terms of that, the alignment of China, India, North Korea, this meeting. Isn't that intriguing in the mix of all this?
Have you've heard of the term BRICS nation?
Yeah. You've said that on a previous episode, the BRICS nations, and trying to form their own currency, yeah?
Wasn't in this episode, but it's not so much forming a currency. It's so you've got Brazil
Yeah, I was about to say
Russia.
Brazil. That's right. They're involved
Yeah,
in that.
so Brazil, Russia, India, China. Now,
Yeah.
what was the S? I can't remember what the S was.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a country that forms the S, and they're the biggest players when it comes to forming that, I guess, that alliance, or economic alliance.
Saudi Arabia? No, it wouldn't be Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, maybe Saudi Arabia. Yeah,
Wow, okay. Because
yeah.
Saudi Arabia is always, remember, on the America's side.
Well, no, Saudi Arabia only agreed to allow their oil to be traded in US dollars. That's where they became friends.
Yeah, yeah. But that continued through to the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
America did position their warplanes, didn't they, in Saudi Arabia?
Oh, look, they became friendly
Yeah.
because of that, of course. But yeah, they're friends only because Saudi Arabia agreed to use US currency. Otherwise, they would not be friends. Otherwise,
What about all these celebrities deciding to build bunkers? Do they know something we don't know?
well, it's either look. I doubt there'll be nuclear war to that level where you need the bunkers.
Hey, what about the article in terms of actually just reminded me this week or the week before it might have came out in France, they've told the hospitals get ready for World War Three.
Yeah, I saw that come up. Look, that is something to take into account. Like I said though, when you consider everything that's going on in Africa, when you consider everything that's going on in South America, when you consider everything going on in Europe and the Middle East, I'm sure there's conflict somewhere in Asia. Like the Middle East is Asia, but I mean more eastern side of Asia.
Yeah, of course.
When you consider all that, we're not far off being in a World War III to
Situation, yeah.
begin with.
All you need is America heavily involved in one of these skirmishes.
Yeah,
Let's say the Russia-Ukraine thing. America really get dragged into this. Then you have World War Three, in my opinion.
yeah, and I forgot to even mention Pakistan and India. Like,
Yeah,
between them two. All we need is them to start off in a full-blown skirmish.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure I read this somewhere in the Bible about the end time that nation will be up, would be nation against nation,
Yeah,
people
and,
against other people.
and see, and look, I personally think that India and Pakistan will probably kick off when Ukraine and Russia cools down.
You think so? Why? Why would they all of a sudden pick it up again?
It's a perpetual war or perpetual conflict to get behind.
It's all to do for a piece of land, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But it's just to keep a perpetual conflict going on in the world, so that way then there's that hive of economic activity to supply the war to keep going.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You see it that way. So you are taking this. I guess this big plan out there, this big global powers out there. It's not a case of this dispute over the territory of Kashmir. That's what it is, Pakistan and India. It's more these big powerful players that are pulling the strings and saying, all right, we need to skirmish over here to stimulate the economy in a certain way. You're looking at it that way, in simple
Well,
terms.
I'm not discounting what the claims that countries have to,
Yeah,
like, and their grief that they have with other nations. I'm
yeah.
just saying that conflict won't spark up until, the other areas are kind of done with, and then it's like, okay, now we can actually put our efforts into making sure this conflict can spark up, and then we can get behind both sides and start making some money.
I know I've said it before, but isn't it pretty sad that a nation like America, who like to throw their muscle around the place military wise, you go to downtown LA, place so many dreams are made, celebrities and movie star wannabes, and there's just people shooting up, and it's a mess with the fentanyl in many major cities in America. In fact, in the news of late, there's been Trump cleaning up Washington, downtown Washington, getting the military, is that correct, involved in that, saying, pretty much saying, hey, if you can't deal with it at a local level, we'll step in. And obviously that's brought some concern and uproar because That's more of a heavy-handed approach, isn't it? When you get the government, the federal government, that is involved. So it's pretty damn interesting that they've got these problems at a local level, but yet they're so heavily involved in wanting to save the world or save so many disadvantaged places in the world when there's enough problems they have back at home to want to deal with.
Well, when you look at the disadvantaged places in the world, they're quickly catching up to some of the advantaged places.
I look at Southeast Asia as a good example. You go to these places like Vietnam and Malaysia, and they're killing it in terms of the infrastructure, the buildings going up. Major cities there now, beautiful major cities, and becoming very, very, very quality of life, getting better and better in these places. So, well, Malaysia's already top notch. It's up there with Singapore, and even Singapore's a modern day miracle when you think about after the Second World War what Singapore was like. And let's not dismiss maybe the greatest accomplishment in human history for such a huge population, 1 billion people, is China.
Yeah. When you look at China after Mao passed away, where it was to where it is now, it's leaps and bounds, massive amounts of improvement that have taken place.
It's just incredible what's going on in that part of the world. I look at it in simple terms that you have so many. I know we've spoken about this before, and it's not the measure to everything, but there's some amazing bridges being built in China at the moment, where the major bridges being built in America.
Yeah. Well, one could argue there that the bridges have been built out.
Really? They've got bridges there that are in disarray.
Yeah, but they've been built out already, so it's more of a maintenance project.
Let me challenge you. The train system in China versus train system in America.
Yeah.
The EV cars, they've caught up, haven't they?
Yeah, but a lot of that comes down to the way that China is run as a country as well.
Yeah. But you're right, but it's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, it is.
The will of people and a common goal, whatever means that happens, is just amazing. Maybe it explains the pyramids more, doesn't it? Good old human brutality can do amazing things. Because they still don't know how the pyramids were really built, do they? I mean, they've got many theories and models on how that was done. That's quite amazing there. Where was it human slaves? I mean, a lot of archaeological evidence to suggest quite the opposite. In fact, they might have even had better working conditions than what we have today, the Egyptians. Remember you've mentioned that before, Peter?
I think, yeah, and I think it was very I think it was, yeah, like, well, look, I wouldn't say from what we discovered that they were heaps better off, but yeah,
They had more time off than they do in America in terms
yeah,
of annual leave.
yeah, exactly, yeah, not by heaps, but yeah, it was it was still better conditions, and that's 2,000 years ago.
Yes, the will of the people, eh? What you can achieve. We underestimate what human beings can achieve on a common cause, common goal. It's
Yeah,
amazing sometimes when you just walk in major city. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. Could be in your own backyard. And you look up at some of those skyscrapers and you go, common goal, common cause, common intelligence, and amazing things we can do. The amazing things we can do in health now. When you think about people are living older, so much more known about diseases now, modern medicines, what they can do, what they can't do still, but what they can do is quite damn amazing. Even every day they're saying, and now they're talking about in Germany, another story in the news that lately. Have you heard about that gel for knee replacements? Did you hear about that one?
I
In
did.
Germany. Yeah. There's some sort of gel or something they're talking about, possibly, for what is it for knee replacements? Is that right? Is that what it's going to be for? I'm looking it up.
Yeah, and I think also they can use it to replenish the.
Cartilage.
It's not so much for knee replacements. I mean, it will replace the need to get a knee replacement.
Yeah, to help
because it
build damage.
rebuilds the cartilage.
Yeah, rebuilds the cartilage. This is damn amazing.
Yeah. I can't remember if it's synthetic or if it's grown and then implanted. I can't remember that.
Develop the
Those
gel
details.
to regrow joint cartilage without a surgery.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's been on the market since the post-holiday gel has been on the market, but falsely claimed Germany was still seeking regulatory approval across the state. Anyway, whatever it is, it's speculative. Whether it's going to be there in the next year or 2 years, the point is there's some amazing technologies that are coming out now in the health space, and AI is just going to continue to evolve that. And we haven't even touched on, because I don't know about you, on some of my video feeds now, the AI videos are getting pretty damn scary.
Yeah, they're scary with all the deep fakes, and you could be watching a video of someone that looks like Donald Trump, Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and it's not actually them, and you can program them to do whatever you want.
It's pretty interesting, some of the riots and protests that have been going on. You might be watching a short video feed and believing it and thinking, oh, look, they're protesting in Osaka, Japan. And then you realise that's an AI.
Yeah.
You find out it's an AI-generated crowd. There wasn't a protest at that time. You don't know if it's true or not. It's reaching that point. You have to fact-check it.
And then how do you fact check it? It becomes like a catch-22.
I read a story during the week and I tried to fact check it. Something about what the Australian government. Oh yeah, the Australian government's going to bring in a law that. Did you hear it? Where if you're 60 years old and over, you couldn't drive at night. Did you read that one anywhere?
60 years old and over.
Yeah, there were a lot of news sources on it, and I then went and fact checked it, and please listeners respond back. I think it was a bit of a furphy out there, but that's what's going to happen. We're going to get a lot more fake news out there. Fair dinkum AI generated as well, so a lot of it too, which makes it pretty scary, doesn't it, Peter?
Well, you know what? What's the thing that makes it scary? It's not so much the fake news part, right? It's once you become accustomed to news potentially being fake, you have absolutely nothing that you can trust in, because
That's a worry.
that's right. So then that means everything that's in front of you can't be trusted, and you're literally in a position that you're looking at fog essentially, because everything's fogged up.
Won't that create unrest, social unrest, if there's a lack of trust in the government and the media and what they're reading? People will come up with their own beliefs.
Well, that's what makes it scary. Like when you think about it as well, like I'm sure that any of the listeners can think of someone crazy in their life that came up, and I don't mean that they're actually crazy, but they came up with a crazy idea what they want to do to the politicians, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And like I say, it's crazy because like if you were to try to do this normally, you'd get locked up and thrown in jail for life. But it's something that can potentially come to fruition when you have that fog in front of you.
I agree. A bit scary, isn't it? Well, where we going before this?
Yeah.
So, out of today's episode, what did we get? It was all about one word in particular. What was that word again, Peter?
Absolutism.
Absolutism. Is that what it was? Absolutism. Remember,
Absolutely.
the bit about living in absolutes. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. That's something to think about, listeners. Because the path to the dark side leads to, I can't remember, but something not too good. My name is, of course, Robert, and with me is... We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, guys.
Bye.